Hello, and welcome to the C3 Method podcast with your host, Robert Polenick. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. Today's podcast number 2278. The title is Which is Better, Fasting or Low Carb? So we're going to be discussing two diet approaches. We're going to be looking at them in the lens of, or with the goal of, minimizing body fat and maybe actually promoting fat loss while sustaining and or maximizing performance. So a person wants to perform really well and maintain body fat, or they're wanting to lose body fat while maintaining performance. This came from one of my newer clients. I'll read through a paragraph of part of the communication we had at the beginning. She is a personal trainer and an Instagram influencer. She schooled me a bit on the term of influencer, which was fun. I had previously kind of thought of it as like a hokey term, like who in the world, what's an influencer? She actually really likes the term. And in her mind, she loves the concept of influence. And we were talking about it. It was a really fun conversation. I'll have to make into like its own podcast. The concept of influence versus manipulation. And her approach towards social media was, what are the common things, what are the popular things that people are talking about now? And how can I influence people's perceptions in a way that's going to keep them healthy and learn what they need to learn, but sift through the crap that, isn't good stuff and or doesn't apply to them. So she loves the influencer aspect. She's not trying to manipulate people to buy something. She's not trying to control a narrative. She's just influencing in a positive way people's interpretations of what is happening in popular culture. I freaking loved it. So that was a really cool conversation. But let's get to what I actually want to talk about today. This is part of what she wrote to me. You work with a friend of mine. I've admired her physique for years and recently reached out to her for nutrition advice. She said, quote, I just follow what my trainer tells me, end quote, and suggested that I reach out to you. So here I am. I love how lean she stays all year, but yet she's able to be physically strong and perform at a top level. I am in good shape myself. I recently got my body fat tested at 15%. She's a female, by the way, so that's actually that is very lean, very good body fat percentage. But I often struggle with workout energy, which causes my performance to drop, which then causes me to struggle to adhere to my diet due to motivation. I would like help with understanding how you can help your clients stay both lean but able to perform optimally as well. I've been bouncing back and forth between fasting to stay lean, but then I feel that I need to add carbs for workout performance. So I will switch back and forth between fasting and low carb diet structures. Can you help me figure out the right approach specific to my needs? Okay, awesome. So this is fun, and I wanted to talk through this because it highlights some of the nuances of individuality when it comes to nutrition. There are common, trends and theories and threads of what happens and what's true for most people. But then how do we apply that stuff is very individual basis, and it needs to be. That's partly why the clear, concise, and customized tagline we have for the business, why it includes customized. Because how you apply general theories and truths of nutrition does look different per person. So let's go through a little bit about her current habits. She currently fasts on her basically non-training days. So her current structure is she weight trains on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. She does light cardio and or takes the day off and does business crap on Wednesdays and Fridays. And then she has a complete rest day on Sunday. She tries to physically and mentally and emotionally just kind of disconnect and have like a restoration day. She will fast on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. So basically the non-weight training days. She has her last meal at 7 p.m. the night before. She goes to bed, spends the whole waking time the next day not eating, goes to bed, and then has her next meal at 7 a.m. the following day. So it's a 36-hour fast. She had listened to a lot of podcasts. She actually sent one of the references, and I had actually listened to that one already, about the pros and cons and benefits touted of a 36-hour fast. So that's why she chose to do that. There's like Diary of a CEO. If you heard of that podcast, it's a really good podcast hosted by Stephen Bartlett. If you just type in on YouTube, Diary of a CEO fasting, you'll find some really good resources. That would be just a good place to start if you want to learn more about that. So that's what she does, is she fasts on those days. Her thought process is, I'm not performing on those days. So I don't have to worry about performance. I'm not weight training. So I can focus on just pure fat loss and really drive fat loss on those days. And then on her training days, she does low carb. She trains midday between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. That's whenever she has the most downtime at her gym. Usually that's a very common downtime for any gym or any trainer. She has for breakfast just proteins and fats. 1 hour pre-workout, she has lean meat, rice, and fruit. So that's her carbs. And then post-workout and her evening meal, she goes back to protein and fats. What she's experiencing is just low energy all the time, suboptimal performance. She's not really getting leaner. She kind of feels soft and pudgy, and she doesn't look the way she wants. She doesn't feel as lean as she should, and she can't perform as well as she wants to. But she doesn't know what else to do. I mean, this seems like a very smart approach for both body fat control, but then the carb loading pre-workout to have better performance. Why doesn't she look and feel like the client, like her friend, like my client, and like any other client that I have, that we would have these goals of being lean but also still have high performance? The issue she's running into is each approach that she's using. Well, let's not say each. Like fasting, for example, to control body fat is unnecessary. It's a very extreme form of body fat driven diet. So if we look at fasting, is fasting necessary for fat loss? Hell no. We know that being in a calorie deficit drives fat loss, but you don't need to be in a deficit of 100%, like meaning I'm eating nothing. So I don't need that much of a deficit to drive fat loss. You can be in it's just like whatever your maintenance calories are. If you take away 20% of that, that drives fat loss. You don't need to be, 0 calorie, just 80% of what you would need for maintenance. You can even go as low as 70%. So 70% of maintenance calories is enough to drive fat loss. You don't need to be at 0. So what's happening is she's creating too large of a deficit. She's then racking up all this activeness by training clients, being active during the day, a generally pretty active person. Her step count is almost always at 8,000 to 10,000, she said, on a daily basis. So she's a very active person. She doesn't need to be at 0 calories to drive fat loss. It is too severe of a deficit. And what's happening is then on her quote-unquote refeed meal, her pre-workout meal, she's having some rice and fruit. She was only having 50 grams of rice and about 200 calories, which is about 50 grams of fruit. So she's only having about 100 grams of carbs as her loading meal after having like a 36-hour fast and then a meal of just fats and proteins, and then she's having 100 grams of carbs and wondering why that's not enough to fuel performance. It's throwing a penny down a well. I mean, my gosh, it is. She's created. Basically, she's gone through all of her glycogen. She has no stored energy. Her body has a ton of unmet recovery needs to even get to baseline. And then she's only thrown in 100 grams of carbs. That is nowhere near enough. I mean, my gosh, 0. And it's essentially almost like doing nothing. And that's what she's feeling, is she's getting nothing from it because it's such a small amount of carbs, but such an extreme deficit she's trying to refeed from. So that's essentially what's happening is the aspect of fasting for fat loss is way too extreme and unnecessary, especially given her goals. She's already at 15% body fat. It's not like she's getting ready for bariatric surgery and we have to go from 40% body fat down to 30 so she can even qualify for her surgery. So we're not even at some extreme fat loss conditional state to where it might warrant this type of an extreme approach. Fasting is a very extreme approach for fat loss. It's completely unnecessary. And it's creating too large of a deficit that she can't eat her way out of to then be able to maximize performance. And then low carb isn't bad. I mean, if she was doing low carb all the time, meaning she's not driving this deficit with fasting, she's at, say, between 70 to 80% of maintenance calories on days off, and then on training days, maybe she's at maintenance calories, maybe even plus 10%, which wouldn't negate the deficit she's been at on her rest days, even if she only has 3 rest days. Plus 10% on active days, even if it's 4 days a week, still creates a net negative calorie deficit. Like, she's still in a calorie deficit for the week. She's still going to drive fat loss over the long term with that structure. So we would want actually training days to be at maintenance or even plus 10%, and having the majority of our carbohydrates pre, intra, and post-workout. And I would argue for sure more pre-workout if our schedule permits. So we want to have carb loading before our workouts to maximize our workouts, because she's doing carb dependent or kind of carb related type of training, weight training. So our goal would be is between workouts to not dig such a deficit that the one pre-workout meal can't pull us out of and give us enough energy to sustain the workout. And we can even add an intra-workout to sustain the second half of the workout, since she does do long workouts. So we could do pre-workout carbs at a large amount, intra-workout carbs at a medium amount, and post-workout carbs at a smaller amount, but just to drive the protein utilization, the protein synthesis, and a little bit of energy to get her through like the rest of the day before her body gets like angry, grumpy, and kind of fights the fat loss process. So we would actually want to, on training days, front load her carbohydrates ahead of her workout. So high carbs before the workout, medium carbs intra, low carbs post. And then the other meals, she can have predominantly fats and proteins if she'd like. But then on non-training days, we can still have carbs. We would just more evenly distribute them throughout the day. We wouldn't really want to have a loading phase, if there's nothing to load for, if she's not doing a workout. So that was essentially what we decided to set up, is on her training days, she's going to be at plus 10% maintenance. So 10% over maintenance calories. On her non-training days, she's going to be between 20 to 30% deficit. This still gives her a net deficit for the week. It's still going to drive fat loss overall, long-term, week after week after week. By having the workout days be 10% over maintenance, she's going to feel like she has good energy. And it's going to give us enough carb-based calories to fill up some glycogen to be able to use that during the workout. Now, depending on how far ahead of the workout, depends on what carbs we eat. Because if we eat a carb that takes 3 hours to digest, but she eats that 1 hour before the workout, she doesn't have that available at the workout. So we're choosing to add carbs maybe to breakfast and that 1 hour pre-workout, so she has enough time to digest the carbs and kind of convert that to usable energy. And then intra-workout if we want, and post-workout if we want. So that's essentially what we're looking for, is we're going to, on non-training days, be at a 70 to 80% of maintenance calories. It really wouldn't matter on those days whether she did that once her protein requirements are met. It wouldn't matter whether the rest of the calories came from carbs or fats. It doesn't matter what the percentage is, doesn't matter at all. As long as total calories are controlled, she wouldn't possibly gain any body fat, whether it came from all carbs or all fat, or a mixture of any percentage. So as long as total calories are controlled, as long as our protein is the appropriate percentage of those total calories, the remaining calories can come from carbs or fats, doesn't really matter. Now, if she has mostly carbs, she might find that she's more hungry between her meals, and it kind of messes her up. So we need to either eat more meals during the day, or we would drop the carb percentage, put in some fat percentage, because fats are slower to digest, and then that better matches the digestion rate between the meals that she currently has. So if she currently has breakfast, a midday meal, an afternoon snack, and then an evening meal, we would want to eat the percentage of carbs and fats that allows her to feel hungry at each of those meals, but not too hungry before she gets to each of those meals. And we want to focus on foods she enjoys and foods that she digests well. That's the goal. it doesn't matter what the hell the percentage of the fats and carbs are. It really doesn't. It doesn't make any difference. As long as our calories are controlled, as long as our protein is controlled, and as long as whatever the percentage of carbs and fats we're using matches the meal frequency and her hunger demands and needs. That's the structure we look for on non-training days. On training days, we want to have carbs early enough in the day that they're usable by the time of the workout. So she's going to have carbs at breakfast. She's going to have carbs at her 1 hour pre-workout. And then we're going to have a little bit of carbs after the workout to just fuel evening activity and to fuel protein synthesis, the protein getting from the bloodstream into the muscle tissues to just start to do repairs and things we need post-workout. So we're going to have carbs at breakfast, and that's going to be our largest carb portion. Carbs at lunch, that's going to be more of a moderate. And then post-workout, it's going to be her lower carb intake, but still some carbs. And then at dinner, she can have whatever she wants. You know, if she wants to drop the carbs just to kind of really focus on a satiating meal so she feels full all night, she can do that. If she wants to have carbs, as long as her total calories are controlled to the 10% above maintenance, totally fine there as well. So really, what we're looking for is we don't need to pick a diet structure such as fasting or low carb or really anything. We want to control calories. We want to make sure our protein is sufficient within those calories. And then the remaining amount of calories can come from any percentage of carbs and fats that matches our hunger needs, our meal frequency, our digestion rates, our digestion quality, the food preference we like, whether the food is easily accessible and ready for us to eat, if it's convenient. There's so much freedom with what we can eat. We don't need to have these aggressive restrictions. Really, it's being consistent with calorie control and protein percentage, and then distributing our calories and protein as what best matches our daily demands for activity. That's it. So it doesn't need to be labeled in any certain way. It doesn't have to be this fancy fasting or intermittent fasting or, keto this or low carb that, or they don't need to put a name on things. We just do what feels best and gets us the results we want, and whatever the hell that ends up being is whatever the hell it ends up being. So if a person prefers carbs, we have more carbs. If they prefer fats, we have more fats. If they get too hungry between meals, we lean into fats. If they're not hungry enough, we pull fats out and we focus more on carbs. It's really just adjusting things based on that person's individual needs. That is the type of structure we're looking for. So when we look at which is better, fasting or low carb, in this case, neither. Neither one was better for her. She didn't need to be doing either one of those. And I know that this is a misleading title. But I wanted to use the title to pull people in to be able to educate and teach the point that you don't need to do any of these if you don't want to for body fat control and or performance optimization. If you like fasting, then fast. If you like carb, do low carb. But if you're trying to do those and you're experiencing less than optimal results, you don't have to do either one of those. Our goal is to help you make your diet, not follow a diet created by somebody else for God knows who or whatever general population there was. Let's use the parameters of what makes a diet effective and apply them individually as to what is best for you. That is the goal. It's true customization. We want you to follow your diet, not a diet. We want to follow your diet. Cool. Okay. Hopefully that was fun. Hopefully that was interesting. If you have any follow-up questions, shoot me an email at c3method@gmail.com. The 3 is spelled out T-H-R-E-E, so it's C-T-H-R-E-E method@gmail.com. You can go to our website for more information on our services. If you want nutrition coaching or nutrition training, business development, all those other things, it's c3method.com. And then if you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people we share it with, the more people can help. If you like the information we share in the podcast, we do share other and kind of different information. We can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name C3 Method. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.